everybody's got a framework. I have one specifically around growth. I call it the infinity growth loop. And it's a way to hijack the stagnation spiral. So the villain in a lot of the work I do is the stagnation spiral, which most organizations find themselves in, whether it be denial, status quo, silos, rigid processes, and disengagement, and trying to get into this like growth. But it has to be a new growth that's not driven by brute force. And so we created a framework called the infinity growth loop that hijacks the loop. And then when you stay in it, growth becomes inevitable.
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another Engage Presents. I'm Engage president Jake Olson. Alongside me today, Frankie Russo, which at first, Frankie, I thought maybe I was going to be interviewing a mobster, but instead I got an 8 times Inc. 500 founder, a thought leader in a global thought leader in growth. We got a best-selling author. So, Frankie, I don't know if you were or are part of the mob, but that's kind of besides the point. You are.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's interesting. Yeah, that's one way to introduce me to potential clients and event people. We'll just get that out of the way. I am not in the mob. I may or may not have had family members that were in the mob. I'm not allowed to really talk about it. Uh,
Okay, well, we'll do a stay tuned for Frankie Russo.
yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, no,
But
no mob ties.
so you are, though, a serial entrepreneur, and I just first want to ask, this is always the question I want to know for serial entrepreneurs. What is one of the weirdest ideas you've ever green-lighted, and how did it work out?
Yeah, so the one of the weirdest ideas I've ever greenlighted was to make my brand built around this concept of love your weird. So legitimately, love your weird is a big part of my brand now. That was very weird for me to do. It was uncomfortable for me to do. I spent my whole life trying to not be weird, only to find out that it was the missing piece to a lot of the genius that was getting blocked by
Hmm.
wasting energy not being weird. Another weird idea I did in business that ended up being really, really important was I had never been to India. And we decided the day after I did another first, which was buy a software company back in 2015, the day after me and the new CTO, former CEO of the company we purchased, we flew to India, had never been there, and we were hoping we could find some people to build software there. We had one person that had used to work for Google, and we were paying them via PayPal. And so I thought, let's get some more PayPal people in here, right? Let's do this. And the night I got there, they said, "Oh, no one will work for you if they think you're like kind of a fly by night or a startup. You need to, they want to work for an established company." And I was like, okay. So they said, you have to start a company here. So, okay. So in 1 week, I started a company, met with the government, hired an attorney, hired
Oh,
an accountant, leased a building floor for 3 years, hired construction workers, and bought 4 air conditioners. So you may not know this, when you start a company in India, you have to bring your own air conditioners and your own door. It's just one of those like pull down deals. Uh, yeah, so I flew home 1 week later thinking, what in the weird did I just do? And that was one of the weirdest things. But ironically, obviously, we created a great team there and a great company that allowed us to have a 24-hour cycle with our US developers. But it ended up actually being this really important part of the story because the Fortune 500 that bought our company years later, it was the first time they'd ever really like taken note of our company because they had been trying to figure out how to do the exact same thing in India and had failed. So, yeah, that was very, very weird thing that we did that I can honestly say is one of the weirder things we did in
dude,
the
that is incredible, Frank. I think what you should do, and take this and run with it, but you should go do that in like 10 different countries. How to start a company within a week in all these countries and write a book about it.
That's it. That's actually a great idea. And now with AI, I probably could start them in a week, even faster. Maybe I could do it in a day. But yeah, so besides that, yeah, I don't know how to top that weird wise.
No, that's
What I did
that's
with my
great.
companies.
So about kind of this love your weird movement. kind of what's the story behind starting that, and how can teams really implement that and bring that to light in their own organization?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I rarely lead with the whole love your weird thing. It's one of those battle cries that when you leave the experience, right? You leave the talk, everybody's like, yeah, I love my weird. Most people aren't calling up being like, hey, look, we're having a bad quarter. We're in this like stagnation. We want to grow again. So if we could just figure out how everybody loved their weird, then we should be fine, right? We're gonna have a great quarter. And no CEO's ever called and said that. So love your weird is kind of actually at the real deep, deep, deep heart of the work that we're doing. The real power of loving your weird came from an accidental place for me. So I accidentally started loving my weird when I had to reconcile with just how long I had been living in like an inauthentic existence about 8 years ago when I went through a divorce. So it was one of those things that I was in this like I'd done hundreds of hours of therapy and all this stuff, and it really boils down to that weird kid that we were at 5, 6 years old. So this whole love your weird thing is actually about 5, 6 year old version of Jake, 5, 6 year old version of Frankie, which turns out was a astronaut, cowboy, mad scientist, TV preacher, by the way, if you were wondering what I was into at 5. And so I started to really kind of reconnect with that. And it was incredible for me individually, like as a person, and it changed the way I show up. I finally was set free of like worrying so much about what everyone else thinks. So it changed the way that my people pleasing and codependency and all kinds of other fun stuff for me personally. But what happened was is that then I started to think, well, what if there was a value to this at work? And so at the time, I already had a fairly good sized company, 100 employees, and we started creating this love your weird culture. And the idea was that what if we created a safe enough space where each person could show up with their weird, which usually is the piece that they're not showing up with. And when they show up with that, what you find is that people are in more of what their genius zone would be. So the whole work around Love Your Weird is just to help unlock the genius that's trapped inside all the people in the organization. That's really what the value of it. And that's from years of doing this. And then what happened was is that now we created this culture. It wasn't just a great culture where people could show up as their whole self and they're weird. Another weird thing that we did at work, if you go back and look at our Google tour, everybody is in these crazy weird outfits. And this is stuff they brought to me. And so a lot of it was just about me giving people permission.
Yeah.
I gave myself permission, I gave other people permission, and then we saw what would come out. And ultimately, what happens is you have a space where people really start to love what they do again, love where they work. And as a result, they show up to the product, they show up to the customer, they show up to the positioning, they show up to the whole organization in a different way.
Uh,
And it was after that that we actually grew 60x in 3 years. That was right before we sold the company to that Fortune 500. But it
wow.
was incredible what happened as a result of some of these accidental weird findings.
No, that's really interesting, and that's kind of you also bring into that, and I'm sure it's a facet of it of bringing vulnerability into that and how that helps shape the culture of teams.
100%. And you see, the bottom line is that an organization is just a sum total of the people inside of it,
Hmm.
right? And same thing with a product. A product is just on the other end of everything that we're building. And so it's critical to really look at this stuff, especially when you're having all these issues with loyalty, where with employees or with employers or with customers. So there's a real loyalty and trust bankruptcy already that's pretty rampant in most work right now. So yeah, vulnerability. Here's the thing. So like vulnerability, trust, connection, belonging. You hear all these words, and they're great and they're true and they're exactly what we need. What I found was that practically speaking, it's okay, cool. How do we get there? Like if our three pillars are like, okay, get this and get that, and it's all great. And what I started to realize is that all the frameworks, including my own, right? So like everybody's got a framework. I have one specifically around growth. I call it the infinity growth loop, and it's a way to hijack the stagnation spiral. So the villain in a lot of the work I do is the stagnation spiral, which most organizations find themselves in, whether it be denial, status quo, silos, rigid processes, and disengagement, and trying to get into this like growth. But it has to be a new growth that's not driven by brute force. And so we created a framework called the infinity growth loop that hijacks the loop, and then when you stay in it, growth becomes inevitable. But that framework, just like everybody else's framework, a lot of times it's not continuous. And there's a reason for that. And what we found is that the reason is that unless that loop creates a space and is fueled by the collective genius of the people in the organization, it's not self-propelled. It doesn't keep going. And so you keep trying all these different things. But creating the space that we're talking about is the unlock. It's huge. Now the issue then becomes when I mean, usually I do this in my talks, right? Where about two-thirds of the way in, I'll ask everyone to raise their hand and let me know who identifies as a genius. And as you can imagine, no one raises their hand. And I expect that. And then I spend the back half of the talk telling them that not only they're a genius, there's science to prove it, and here's how you unlock it. I've come full circle where now I've realized that the way you unlock your genius is actually at the intersection of your why and your weird. Where the two come together, it's weird times why equals pure genius, right? So, for example, like for me, my why is I help organizations do what I did, unlock huge growth, right? Go from make growth continuous and be the fastest growing companies in America. That's my why. That's why you call me. It's what I'm an expert at. But a lot of people do that. But not that many people talk about the intersection of growing the organization and unlocking your collective genius. And that little intersection, that's my pure genius. And so that's where I used to talk about the weird early on or lead with love your weird. And what I have found is that it's so much more powerful if it's this twist that they don't see coming, but that really, really feels like they always knew.
I love that, Frankie, and I can already tell being someone in your audience is going to be fascinated throughout the entire thing, but definitely at the end there, I can see how powerful that is. Frankie, I so much appreciate you giving us a little taste of your weird and your talk and just what you do. We can tell you're passionate about it, and we love helping you do that. We appreciate you joining us today. If you want to learn more about Frankie, please visit letsengage.com. Check out his profile. You can definitely book him there. And Frankie, again, we appreciate your time and your insight today.
Hey, love what you guys are doing. It's incredible how you're pushing the envelope to modernize this whole event and experience world. So really, really admirable and huge props on that, Jake. Thanks for having me on.